The perpetual movement does not appear to exist in physics, but I begin to have questions when I realize that the Alibaba stock appears to have invented the perpetual collapse. Another day at minus 11%, and it's still amazing the days of banging that can take this title. So, I'd love to know what people are saying about this stock. That has to be explained to me. Recently, the CEO wrote a letter to shareholders clarifying the situation, which is quite positive. In any case, they do not raise any specific concerns, so there is no prior knowledge of the company's fundamentals to explain investors' fears. But like all Alibaba failures, there is no doubt that there is news from the outside world. For me, there were two, which I will now share with you. The first is that Nancy Pelosi has scheduled a trip to Asia, which is currently underway, and it has been unclear for a long time whether or not she would go to the island that is specialized in the fabrication of semiconductors. It is evident that Beijing had put a red line around this island, and Beijing had so plainly warned the US not to cross this line, and for a long time there was some debate about whether or not the line would be crossed. The second piece of news, which I believe explains the 11% drop, is that the American authorities has decided to include Alibaba on the list of companies that are likely to be excluded from US quotas. Simply because the American authorities criticizes Chinese companies for having audited accounts but denying American inspectors access to the details of these audits. I believe this is the primary cause of the recent 10% drop, but does it alter anything about the business? Well, basically no. Unless there is accounting fraud and these famous audits reveal flaws in basic accounting principles that confuse investors, but starting from the principle that it is a political conflict, it makes no difference if Alibaba is no longer quoted in the US, they will obviously always be quoted in Hong Kong. What this can mean for a time is that without American investors, there isn't enough liquidity to see the price rise, but it doesn't affect the fact that Alibaba's intrinsic worth is determined by the cash that the firm earns, and at current level, there is no change. And yes, Alibaba is still a company with around $70 billion in cash on hand. They can return their debts immediately with less than half of this cash. Alibaba remains a company with exponential revenue growth. This has not changed. When we calculate the cash discount that Alibaba will generate in the future at a reasonable rate of return, it is still potentially worth more than $300. Alibaba is still the leader in Asian e-commerce, as well as the leader in cloud computing, a sector that is growing and might quadruple by 2025. This is what Alibaba is today, a firm with such a high profile that it would undoubtedly be one of everyone's favorites if it were based in Europe or the United States. So, I suppose the only option I have is to assume that there will be no intercontinental confrontation amongst everyone. And, in reality, I don't care because, if this dispute must occur, I believe we will have more important things to consider than whether your investing account or my stocks will lead Alibaba to increase. Finally, if you want to read the letter from the DG, the letter from Alibaba's general director, I've included a link in the description. Daniel Zhang came to inform us that Alibaba is still a firm that allows China's 1 billion people to actively consume. In mainland China, they have over 1 billion customers. The second significant statistic is 124 million customers who will spend more over $1,400 every year on Alibaba's enterprises. It's nearly unbelievable when you consider that the average monthly salary in China is around $900. Finally, they currently have roughly 300 million clients on their Taobao deal platform, with 20% of them being new customers this year. So, once again, quite outstanding growth numbers for certain of their company areas. Above all, the most crucial news on Alibaba's fundamentals is that Daniel Zhang has stated that they are in profit for the first time on the cloud business. The cloud is Alibaba's most important development potential, and at the current share price in proportion to the company's revenue, we are only valued on the business body, e-commerce in China. You just pay the business heart, and something like the cloud is not represented in the current valuation, despite the fact that it is beginning to profit. And as for the cloud business, you must comprehend the extent of this type of business. It's all about owning the internet. Today, Amazon generates a substantial portion of its money from its cloud business, since it is essentially a rent, a lifelong and everlasting payback that will come to you, the master of the internet, from the routers. The censors will pay you this price for the rest of your life, just to have the right to live on your property, your lord's territory. So, it's a different sort of industry in which Alibaba might be a leader in Asia, with over 27 areas and perhaps over 1.5 billion people involved. They will be one of the primary participants, benefiting from this continual and everlasting payback for as long as the internet exists in Asia. And so, personally, in terms of its thoughts on the business in which it has fundamental features, I stay engaged in Alibaba. When I watch the huge falls that the title may experience in a single day, I am still in a lot of pain. I'm forcing myself to recall why I got there in the first place. But it's still remarkable to witness how much this stock suffers from this continual collapse, which never stops delivering us days at -10 or at -15%. And we've had some rebounds that have gone the opposite way, so I'm hoping that will be the case. In the meanwhile, for those having a pretty strong position on that stock, they may simply put a little bit back into the pot at the current prices, which are really appealing. But I would not recommend to double your position if you are still heavily invested in BABA. If you didn't enjoy this video, thank you for your time and for sticking around to the end. If, on the other hand, you liked this video, I thank you for your subscription and wish you all a wonderful day. I'll see you shortly. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video.